I only missed 108 calls from the female CEO. But Serafina, my autistic childhood sweetheart, believed I had abandoned her all over again. Terrified, she locked herself in the study and grabbed a small pocket knife. She started hurting herself. Complete panic set in. By the time I heard and raced back to the Sterling family villa, the main hall was already packed with people. I looked at the butler, asking in a complete panic, "What happened to Serafina?" The butler sighed heavily, explaining that the young miss had locked herself in the study. He said he tried calling her for dinner multiple times with absolutely no response. Hearing that made my chest tighten with fear. I told him to find someone to break the door down. He turned to order the staff, but I stopped him. "Hold on, breaking it might scare Serafina. There has to be a spare key, right?" The butler nodded, saying they had one and would grab it immediately. He quickly fetched the key and handed it to me. Snatching the key, I raced upstairs. Standing outside the study door, I knocked gently and called out to her, "Serafina, please open the door." But my voice was met with nothing but heavy, suffocating silence. There was no answer, and the lock did not turn. It felt like she had heard me calling out, but inside, she shook her head, dismissing the thought. It could not be. Asher was gone, and he would never come back for her. Just as Serafina tightened her grip on the knife, preparing to press deeper, the lock clicked open. I had used the spare key to open it. As the hallway light spilled inside, I saw the room was a complete wreck. My eyes scanned the darkness, desperately searching for Serafina. When I finally spotted her, my heart stopped. "Serafina, please, do not do this." In the doorway, her close friends, Dr. Cleo and Beatrix, froze in horror, not daring to take a single step. Right now, everything depended on me. Serafina slowly raised her head toward the doorway, blinking her beautiful but completely blank eyes. Believing her mind was just playing cruel tricks on her, a fragile smile appeared on her pale face. She muttered that she was seeing the imaginary Asher again, while holding the sharp blade right against her chest. Dark blood was already soaking into her white dress, a terrifying sight. Fearing that any sudden movement might startle her, I did not dare to rush her. I crept forward in slow, deliberate steps, stopping about 6 feet away from where she sat. "Serafina, look at me. I am really here. Put the weapon down, okay?" She stared back at me, totally stunned. Afraid that I would dissolve into thin air at any moment, she muttered with a stubborn, childlike despair that Asher did not want her anymore. Seeing her like this broke my heart into a million pieces. "Serafina, I never abandoned you. Look, I am standing right here." Noticing her expression soften ever so slightly, I said, "I missed you so much. Can you give me a hug?" She stared back at me, her mind locked in a fierce, terrified battle. She was terrified that everything she saw was just a beautiful illusion. Once she realized this was real, Serafina looked down at the blade, pulled it back, and threw it away as far as she could. The second she let go of the weapon, I lunged forward, wrapping my arms around her in a fierce, protective embrace. She reached up to hold me, but when she noticed the crimson stains covering her fingers, her hands froze midair. She wanted to wash them first, so she would not ruin my clothes, whispering that her hands were dirty and asking me to wait. I squeezed her even tighter, refusing to let her go. "It is okay," I whispered. "It is not dirty at all." I was too terrified to loosen my grip, dreading what she might do to herself if I let her slip away. Finally feeling my solid presence, the tension in Serafina's body slowly started to fade. Then, exhausted beyond measure, she went limp and fainted. I caught her, shaking her shoulders gently while screaming her name in terror. "Serafina, please wake up." Hearing my panicked shouts, Dr. Cleo and Beatrix rushed into the room to help us. Springing into action, Cleo cracked open her medical kit and immediately began evaluating Serafina's condition. I stood aside, eyes glued to Serafina on the bed, desperately asking if she was going to be okay. "When will she wake up? Is the cut deep? Will she be in a lot of pain when she opens her eyes?" Hearing my rapid-fire questions, Cleo looked surprised by how deeply I cared. She had always assumed that in our relationship, I was the one trying to escape. She thought only Serafina was hopelessly obsessed, while I did everything I could to run away from her. But watching us today, she realized that was not the truth at all. Cleo looked up and told me that her hands would heal, but the chest wound was deep. She needed to rest. She should wake up tomorrow. I looked down at Serafina's quiet, sleeping face and nodded as Cleo handed me her number. "Call if anything happens," she said, slipping out with Beatrix and gently closing the door. I tucked her in, held her uninjured hand, and leaned against the edge of the mattress, just watching her breathe. Her eyes were shut tight, and her lips had lost every bit of color. Serafina always had pale skin, but now she looked as fragile as porcelain. I squeezed her hand and whispered for her to wake up and talk to me soon. "You were completely fine this afternoon. How did you end up like this?" She stayed asleep, completely silent. It reminded me of my past life, seeing her lie beside me with her eyes shut just like this. No matter how much I pleaded, she never answered. Back then, It felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Before I knew it, exhaustion took over, and I drifted off right there against the bed. Sometime in the dead of night, a faint voice called my name. I snapped awake instantly and scrambled to check on her. Sweat drenched her sheets, her face burning with a harsh, feverish flush as she grimaced. She kept thrashing and mumbling in her sleep, crying out for Asher and begging me not to leave. I tried to soothe her, whispering that I was right there and wasn't going anywhere. I gently wiped her sweat and felt her forehead. She was burning up because of course she was. I grabbed a thermometer to check. It read 39.5 degrees. That was dangerously high. Grabbing the medicine Cleo left on the nightstand, I gently parted Serafina's lips to slide the pill inside. Then I reached for a glass of water to wash it down. But this time, Serafina frowned deeply. She kept her jaw locked tight, refusing to cooperate. The pill just sat on her tongue, and she wouldn't swallow a single drop of water. Panic set right in. I took a massive gulp of water, held her face in my hands, and leaned down to feed her mouth to mouth. My lips pressed firmly against hers, trying to get her to swallow. In her fever-induced delirium, she must have felt like she found water in a desert. She suddenly bit my lip and clamped down hard. She bit down way too hard, actually breaking the skin and drawing blood from my lip. Thankfully, she let go after a moment. I felt her throat move as she finally swallowed the pill, and I let out a massive sigh of relief. I took another sip and helped her drink the rest of it the exact same way, then casually wiped my mouth. Sarah, seriously, did you do that on purpose? Making me feed you like that, only to bite me? Touching my bleeding lip, I sighed. Getting bitten is one thing, but there goes my first kiss, stolen just like that. I gave her a playfully stern look. Just wait until you wake up, because we are definitely settling this score later. After adjusting her blankets, I brought over a basin of warm water to wipe her down. She was still drenched from the fever. Knowing how much of a neat freak she was, there was no way she could sleep like that. I was incredibly careful not to disturb her injuries. For the rest of the night, I stayed by her side, constantly monitoring her temperature. By the time dawn started breaking, I had completely lost track of how many times I checked on her. But finally, her fever broke, the tension in my shoulders began to fade. My eyes grew heavy, and I could not fight the exhaustion anymore. Resting my head near her hand, I collapsed into sleep. When Serafina eventually opened her eyes, she felt a slight weight on her hand and looked down. There I was, passed out right next to her. I even smacked my lips, probably dreaming about eating something amazing. A faint, affectionate smile touched her lips as she watched me sleep so peacefully. To keep me from waking up sore, she slowly slipped her hand free and carefully pulled me onto the bed. After pulling an all-nighter, I was completely dead to the world. I did not even feel myself being moved and showed zero signs of waking up. Smiling, Serafina settled back down on the mattress beside me. Turning onto her side to watch me sleep, she gently caressed my cheek, her voice heavy with sudden emotion. "It is all my fault for pushing Asher so hard," she murmured, noticing my busted, scabbing lip and touching it gently. She wondered how I got hurt. Did I bite myself? Meanwhile, I started to feel a heavy gaze on me. I slowly opened my eyes to find her staring right at me. We locked eyes, and then the reality of the situation hit me. Scrambling upright, I sat on the edge of the mattress and looked at her with pure excitement. "Sarah, you are awake? How long have you been up? Why did you not wake me?" She just smiled faintly. I woke up a bit dazed and asked her how did I end up in the bed. Serafina just blinked her eyes cutely. She said she dragged me up. I awkwardly scratched my head. I must have slept like a rock. "Wait, hold on, you actually dragged me onto the bed?" Serafina nodded honestly and asked what was wrong, calling me Brother Asher. I frowned and told her she still had a wound. How could she exert herself? Right then, I reached out to check her clothes. I had to check if Serafina's stitches had torn. What if she was bleeding all over again? But Serafina caught my hand, stopping me. She insisted she was fine and knew her limits. I told her I had to see it. I just had to. Seeing how stubborn I was being, Serafina finally gave in and lifted her shirt herself. Leaning in close, I inspected the injury. Seeing no fresh blood seeping through, I let out a massive sigh of relief. Because we were so close, Serafina could feel my warm breath brushing right against her skin. The tips of her ears flushed red. Clearing her throat awkwardly, she pulled her top back down and asked if I was relieved now. I smiled and told Sarah that as long as she was okay, I was happy. She must be starving, right? I promised to head downstairs to grab some food. But Serafina did not want me leaving her side for even a single second. She gripped my hand tightly. I smiled helplessly and told her to be a good girl. I would be right back. My gentle coaxing completely defeated her defenses. Serafina nodded obediently and slowly let go of my hand. I walked over to the door and was just about to turn the handle when a knock sounded. I opened it to find Cleo and Beatrix. They wanted to see how Serafina was doing. Stepping aside to let them enter, I told them she was awake. I explained I was getting her food. Cleo changed the bandage, reminding Serafina not to let any water touch the injured area. She warned her not to strain herself. Serafina nodded, whispered a quick thank you, and fell silent. Cleo was totally used to her quiet nature. Seeing she was fine, Cleo smiled and said she would head out. Right then, I walked back upstairs with a warm bowl of porridge. I arrived just as Cleo was getting ready to leave. I nodded a quick hello. Beatrix, realizing she would be a major third wheel if she stayed, quickly piped up to wish Boss Sarah a good rest. She announced she was leaving as well. With those words, she practically bolted from the room. I watched Beatrix dash away at top speed, with real curiosity. Walking over to Serafina's bed, I asked her in confusion why her assistant was running off like that. Serafina hid a laugh, deadpanning that her assistant was just in a huge rush to get to work. I sat by her bed with the porridge. Scooping up a spoonful, I blew on it gently and offered it to her, saying, "Open up." Having me pamper her like this made Serafina a little shy. She reached out, trying to take the bowl from me. She insisted she could feed herself. I frowned, asking if she did not like me feeding her when her hand was hurt. Serafina opened her mouth immediately, whispering that she actually liked it. Smiling in satisfaction as she ate obediently, I kept feeding her patient spoonfuls, one by one. Once she finished half, I offered another spoonful, but she shook her head. She had zero appetite and did not want any more. Staring at the half-empty bowl, I tried coaxing her like a little kid, begging her to take just one more bite. Calling Sarah, my most obedient girl, worked. She actually took another bite. Her fever had just broken, so her body was bound to feel weak and off. I decided not to force her anymore. On the other hand, after tossing and turning all night, I was absolutely starving. Without any shame, I started shoveling her leftovers into my own mouth. Serafina watched in utter shock and called my name in surprise. Mouth completely stuffed with food, I stared back at her in confusion and mumbled to ask what was wrong. Serafina simply smiled and shook her head, saying it was nothing. Then she grabbed a tissue to wipe my chin. Spotting a fresh scab on my lip, she paused, hesitating before asking me about it. She asked how my lip got hurt. If she had not asked, I would have totally forgotten getting bitten there. The pain was gone. Swallowing the last of the porridge, I licked my lips and accidentally grazed the tender scab. Right then, I had no idea what to say. It was not like I could just confess she was the one who bit me. She probably had no memory of doing it. Thinking fast, I claimed a tiny kitten bit me, but Serafina did not believe a single word of it. Watching my face closely, she asked where I would even find a kitten. I lied, claiming a stray cat bit me outside. I stood up right after saying that, ready to bolt. If I stayed and Serafina kept asking questions, I had no idea how to keep this lie going. But Serafina gave me absolutely no chance to run. The moment I stood up, Serafina grabbed me. She leaned her whole body into my arms, her beautiful wide eyes showing a hint of hurt. Still trying to escape, I let out an awkward laugh. "No, I'm just a bit hungry, and wanted to find something to eat." Serafina grabbed the phone next to her, saying she would have someone bring up a meal. I quickly stopped her from making the call. "No need." Serafina set the phone down and pouted her thin lips. "Just spit it out. What actually happened to your lip?" Truth is, she secretly suspected she bit it herself when she was burning up with that crazy fever. She vaguely remembered biting down on something, but the memory was just too fuzzy to be sure. That was why she kept pressing me for a real answer after I claimed a stray cat bit me. Was he calling her a cat? Serafina shook her head with a helpless smile. Brother Asher really is a dummy. He does not even know how to make up a believable lie. Serafina was not letting me off easily, so I just patted her head and spoke softly. "Actually, I accidentally bit my own lip while eating a chicken drumstick last night." Serafina raised a skeptical eyebrow. This excuse actually sounded a lot more realistic than a random stray cat attack. Realizing I had no intention of telling her the truth, she let it go, but as I looked at her wound, my face turned serious. With a sudden, intense sternness, I asked her why she had hurt herself. Did she know how dangerous that was? Serafina lowered her head, staying completely silent, as I kept talking. "Sarah, promise me you will never hurt yourself again, okay?" Looking at my serious face, she tilted her head, nodded, and promised. "As long as you do not leave me or abandon me, I will do whatever you want." But those were thoughts she kept locked in her heart, not daring to speak aloud. Resting against my shoulder, she suddenly felt exhausted. She yawned, eyes tearing up, as I told her to lie down and sleep. She was incredibly drowsy. "Then you have to sleep with me." I froze, but then smiled and nodded, and we both lay down on the bed together. We started out with some space between us, but it did not take long before Serafina closed her eyes and began sliding closer, trying to find the perfect, most comfortable spot. She wrapped her arms tightly around my waist, stopped moving, and drifted off. We ended up sleeping for a really long time. By the time she woke up, it was almost dark. We were still tangled up, holding each other. Seeing me fast asleep, Serafina just quietly watched my face. Suddenly, the door clicked, and her mother, Mrs. Sterling, stepped inside. Asking if Sarah was all right, her mother was quickly ignored as Serafina gave her a sharp look to keep quiet. Mrs. Sterling froze in shock at the sight before her. Why on earth was there a guy sleeping in her daughter's bed? She had never even heard Sarah mention liking anyone. How could she go on a trip with her husband and come back to find her daughter suddenly had a boyfriend? Mrs. Sterling stood in the doorway, completely lost on how to react. Right then, her husband, Mr. Sterling, walked up behind her. Wondering why she was just standing there, he patted her shoulder, about to ask what was wrong, when Mrs. Sterling spun around, grabbed him, and dragged him away, making sure to quietly pull the bedroom door shut behind them. I heard some faint noise outside, waking up completely groggy. Rubbing my eyes, I asked if someone had just entered. She nodded. My mom and dad. Hearing that felt like a bolt of literal lightning. Are you saying your parents are actually here? Where are your mom and dad right now? Serafina smiled and said they were downstairs. She knew her parents well. If they did not see Asher with their own eyes today, they were not leaving. I was so terrified I started stuttering, asking if they saw us in bed together. Serafina found my panic highly amusing and assured me they were very easygoing, so there was no need to worry. I forced a painful smile and insisted I was not scared, just slightly nervous, asking why she had not woken me up sooner. Serafina laughed, saying if Brother Asher did not want to see them yet, she would just tell them to leave first. She promised to formally introduce me next time, confident they would absolutely love me. I felt that would be incredibly rude. We could not do that. We needed to get up, get ready, and head downstairs. Your parents have been waiting so long, Serafina chuckled, telling me to relax, but I scrambled out of bed with lightning speed anyway. After taking a few steps, I rushed back to her side, realizing she was still injured and needed help getting ready. Serafina smiled, blinking up at me. I can walk on my own, she said. I glanced at her. She looked so pale and weak, like a strong gust of wind could knock her flat. What if you fall? Hearing my genuine worry made her melt with happiness, but she silently feared my feelings for her were nothing more than pity. We quickly washed up and headed downstairs together. With every step we took, my anxiety only grew worse. I had no clue what to expect. Sensing my panic, Serafina reached over and took my hand. It is okay. Do not be afraid, she whispered. Her parents had already spotted us. Seeing our locked hands, Mrs. Sterling grinned from ear to ear, staring directly at me. Serafina quickly made the introductions. Mom, Dad, this is Asher. I smiled and nodded, greeting them politely. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling both smiled and nodded back warmly. Mr. Asher, right? Make yourself at home. I nodded, asking them to please just call me by my name. I subtly signaled Serafina to let go of my hand, but she simply refused to loosen her grip. She pulled me over to sit down, keeping herself right by my side. Mrs. Sterling watched us, looking absolutely thrilled. Oh, Asher, I liked you the second I saw you. You are so handsome. If only I had a son like you. Hearing her mother say that, Serafina squeezed my hand even tighter. She was practically screaming with frustration. Please do not turn Asher into my brother next, she thought. She did not want a brother, she wanted a husband. Mom, Serafina blurted out. Of course, Mrs. Sterling knew exactly what her daughter was getting at. She smiled, ignoring her completely as she spoke to me. It is a pity I raised such a daughter, she joked. Hearing Mrs. Sterling say that, I laughed out loud. My nervousness completely vanished. I looked at Serafina beside me and said, Auntie Sierra is a truly wonderful and excellent person. Hearing this, Serafina turned away and let her lips curl into a smile. Mrs. Sterling laughed, saying as long as you think she is good, that is enough. If she ever throws a tantrum at you, just let me know. Serafina threw me a pitiful look. My parents are already taking your side, she whined, pretending to be a neglected patient. I comforted her gently. Your parents love you the most, I said. Serafina fired right back then. Does Brother Asher love me? I froze, deeply embarrassed. I had no idea how to answer. She was putting me on the spot in broad daylight, right in front of her parents. I was just feeling shy, but to Serafina, it looked like hesitation. A flash of disappointment crossed her face. Not wanting to make things awkward, she forced a casual smile and said she was only joking. But both Mr. and Mrs. Sterling could easily tell that I had real feelings for their daughter. Just then, Uncle Winston the butler arrived to announce dinner. Mr. Sterling stood up, ushering us all into the dining room. The mood at dinner was amazing. Mrs. Sterling kept piling food onto my plate, urging me to eat up and not be shy. Eat up, she urged. My mother died when I was young, but Mrs. Sterling's motherly care brought back a deep warmth I had not felt in a very long time. Looking down at my full plate, I quietly thanked her. After we finished eating, Mr. Sterling invited me out to the garden for a quiet walk. As we strolled, he suddenly turned to me. Little Asher, are you curious why Sarah would hurt herself like that? I nodded honestly. I was definitely curious, but when I asked her, she did not seem ready to talk about it. Since she was still weak and recovering, I did not want to press the issue. I figured I would wait for the right moment. Seeing how much Serafina cared for me today, her father knew exactly how important I was to her. So, he decided to share a secret he had kept from everyone else. The gossip says Sarah is crazy, that she attacks and kills people when she loses control. Mr. Sterling offered a bitter, helpless smile. But that is completely false. She would never hurt anyone else. She only locks herself away to inflict pain on herself. In fact, it has been years since she last did something like that. This time, someone or something incredibly important to her must have triggered it. Hearing this, my heart ached for Serafina. What kind of trauma had she survived? Mr. Sterling nodded, his mind drifting back to over a decade ago. He would never forget that horrific year when he nearly lost his daughter forever. When Sarah was 10, things got ugly in the business world. With all the corporate scheming, someone was bound to hold a grudge. And they actually kidnapped her. They used her as leverage to demand a massive ransom and critical corporate documents. But she was always incredibly sharp, even as a kid. Halfway there, she realized something was off and found a way to escape. After searching for days, we finally tracked her down to a tiny, remote village. She was hiding inside a ruined house that had been abandoned for years. When we first saw her, she was huddled alone in a dark corner. She was only 10 back then, just a tiny ball shivering in the shadows. She wouldn't let anyone get close. Try it, and she would instantly hurt herself. Hearing about that remote village triggered a brief, familiar memory, but it vanished before I could grasp it. I just heard Mr. Sterling continue. He said that since then, her mother and he spent so much time keeping her company, slowly rebuilding her safety until she never tried to hurt herself again. Asher, are you scared? Scared of Sarah being like this? I shook my head, looking at him seriously. Uncle, I am not scared at all. My heart just breaks for her. Don't worry, I will take great care of her. Mr. Sterling nodded, saying he could tell that girl really likes me. I nodded and told him to rest assured, promising I would look after Sarah. Before we left, Mrs. Sterling pulled me aside. She quietly slipped an expensive bracelet into my hand, giving me absolutely no chance to refuse her gift. She turned and walked away quickly. Staring at the jewelry, I felt a bit uneasy. I looked at Sarah and asked what I should do. This bracelet looks incredibly expensive, so I probably shouldn't keep it, right? Seeing it in my palm, Sarah smiled and squeezed my hand. She told me to just keep it since her mom gave it to me, so I stopped worrying. But then I started thinking, I really should give her mother a gift to show my appreciation. What should I get her? Sarah leaned in close and whispered, how about we gift her a son-in-law? My ears instantly burned a bright red. Sarah, what did you just say? She knew I had heard her loud and clear. Terrified that I might reject her, she panicked. She told me to sleep early and quickly bolted toward the bedroom. I stood frozen, watching Sarah run off. I muttered to myself, why run so fast? If we are doing it, we are doing it. It is not like I said no. After saying that, I jogged to catch up with Sarah. Just as she reached the bedroom door, Sarah suddenly froze with her hand on the knob. I didn't notice in time, and bumped right into her back. Rubbing my nose, I muttered, Sarah, did you do that on purpose? Seeing my face, Sarah realized she had really hurt me. She anxiously pulled my hands away, apologizing and asking if it hurt badly. Let me see. Seeing her panic, I laughed through my tears. You have to make this up to me, by giving yourself to me. Sarah stiffened, staring at me in absolute shock. She asked if I was actually serious. I nodded eagerly, completely serious. Sarah threw her arms around me, burying her face deep in my chest. Everything I have is yours, she said. Whatever you want, I will give you. I stroked her hair and replied, I only want you. I just want you safe. No more getting hurt. Sarah squeezed me even tighter, whispering that she wouldn't. With Brother Asher by my side, she promised she would always be fine. Hearing her say this made me curious. In my memories, I didn't remember us interacting much in my past life, or even this current one. Every single moment we shared since my rebirth was started by me. I always worried that the current Sarah didn't love me yet. I had absolutely no idea when she started falling for me, so I asked her directly when it all began. Sarah seemed to drift off into her thoughts for a moment. Then, she smiled faintly, showing her cute dimples. She said it was a very long time ago. That made me even more confused, since I had absolutely no memory of her back then. Sarah laughed, saying it was enough that she remembered. I yawned and decided not to overthink it. Sarah turned to ask if I was getting sleepy, and I nodded. Inside, I desperately wanted to sleep beside her, but I feared I wouldn't be able to control myself. To keep things safe, I figured we should probably sleep in separate rooms. I headed toward the door, intending to use the guest room nearby. I told her I would walk her to her own room first. I told her to wash up and rest, but Sarah pouted, insisting she wanted to sleep right here with me. Unable to resist her adorable, Persistent pouting, I finally gave in. She happily snuggled right into my arms. Breathing in her sweet, clean scent, I slowly drifted off to sleep, enjoying a night of peaceful dreams. The next morning, my ringing phone woke us up. Annoyed by the interruption, Sarah sat up and grabbed the device herself. She saw that Barnaby was calling. Even though he was my younger brother, Sarah knew exactly what kind of person he really was. She had always kept quiet, worrying that bad-mouthing my brother would make me upset. Still half asleep, I asked who was calling. Sarah replied quietly that it was Barnaby. She handed the phone over. Honestly, I didn't care. It was way too early for this, and I had absolutely no intention of answering. I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep, but whoever was on the other end just wouldn't take the hint. A moment later, it started ringing again. It felt like this guy wouldn't rest until he actually got me on the line. I sat up in bed, snatched the phone from Serafina, and finally hit the answer button. I barked grumpily, "What do you want, Barnaby? This better be good." Despite my obvious irritation, Barnaby sounded completely unfazed, telling me he was right outside the Sterling family villa. I was honestly speechless. Why was he ruining my morning with Serafina? Why was he even here? Then Barnaby added that I had rushed out in a huge hurry a few days ago. He said I hadn't been home in ages. He finally tracked me down here because he was so worried about me. He complained that the guards at the gate wouldn't let him in. I knew exactly what was actually going on, despite his claims of being worried. The truth was, he just wanted a golden opportunity to get closer to Serafina. Otherwise, why would he show up at her house so early under the guise of caring about me? I spoke directly into the receiver. I told him I was busy and to just go home, then immediately hung up. Serafina looked over, asking if he was there for me. I nodded. He was seriously ruining our peaceful morning, which was incredibly annoying. Serafina nodded in complete agreement. If Asher didn't like someone, then she didn't like them either. I laughed out loud, gently squeezing her soft cheeks. I teased her that if we were living in ancient times, she would definitely be a textbook seductress. She looked up at me, murmuring that she was perfectly fine with being a seductress as long as she got to be with me. I pulled her into a warm hug, laughing that she really was a dyed-in-the-wool seductress. Serafina raised an eyebrow. She said she had to live up to the title. With that, she gently lifted my chin, tilted her head back, and leaned in for a kiss, but she missed my lips entirely. She kissed the back of my hand instead. I blocked my mouth, making her ask if she was really banned from kissing. She was instantly upset, frowning and asking pitifully why she couldn't kiss me. Still blocking my mouth, I told her I hadn't brushed my teeth yet. She laughed helplessly, saying she honestly didn't care. She teased me, asking if I would be disgusted to kiss her before she brushed. I shook my head without a single second of hesitation. I quickly got up to wash. But as we were walking downstairs for breakfast, we suddenly heard what sounded like people arguing. Both of us were completely confused by the noise. Under normal circumstances, the household staff would never dare to make such a scene. Deep down, I already had a pretty good idea of what was going on. Serafina also knew exactly who was throwing a tantrum. Before we even finished walking down the stairs, we saw two bodyguards holding Barnaby back at the main entrance. Barnaby was screaming at the top of his lungs, yelling that he was the second young master of the Liu family and my brother. He threatened them, saying they would pay dearly if they didn't let him inside right now. He called them watchdogs, demanding how they dared to handle him so roughly. The insults flying out of his mouth were getting nastier by the second. But no matter how much Barnaby screamed, the two bodyguards at the entrance didn't budge even a single inch. With stone-cold faces, they kept him blocked. I secretly admired them, knowing they were exactly the highly trained professionals I expected Serafina to hire. When Barnaby tried to force his way in, they grabbed him and pinned him down completely. Watching him throw a massive fit at the front door like an oversized toddler was wild. It was a complete shift from his usual self. Every bit of his refined elegance had completely vanished. After watching the embarrassing display for a moment, I just couldn't stomach his screaming anymore, so I called out to Barnaby. The moment he heard my voice, he shut his mouth. The bodyguards let go of him, and he quickly rubbed his sore arms. Instantly, he put his polished, refined mask back on, and looked up at me. He whined, asking me to look at how they had treated him, while quickly stealing a glance at Serafina. I watched his little performance, a mocking smile tugging at my lips, as I pulled Serafina close by her slender waist. Completely ignoring his whining, I looked at Serafina and openly praised the two security guards at the gate. I told her that the Sterling family security was incredibly impressive and clearly made up of highly trained professionals. Serafina smiled, nodding happily as she linked her arm through mine, guiding me toward the dining room for breakfast. She pulled out my chair before sitting down right beside me. I gently scooped a warm bowl of porridge for her. In that moment, we only had eyes for each other, completely acting as if Barnaby didn't exist right outside the entrance. Barnaby peeked inside, whining that he'd come looking for me first thing in the morning. I mentioned I had not eaten breakfast yet, knowing exactly what he would say. Barnaby just stared at me, then glanced over at Serafina. He looked hopeful and asked if he could join his brother and Sarah for breakfast. I just kept stirring the porridge in my bowl. A smirk crossed my face. Who exactly did you say you wanted to eat with? Barnaby had no clue why I was asking. He only showed up this early to try and get close to Serafina. Forget all the nasty rumors, her gorgeous looks and massive net worth spoke for themselves. No other woman could compare to her. Plus, Barnaby thought he was way better looking than me. He assumed no girl could ever resist him. In his mind, once Serafina got to know him, she would fall head over heels. That thought made Barnaby even more confident, and he lifted his chin with my brother and Sarah, of course. I nearly laughed at his absolute delusion and thick skin. I just raised an eyebrow, staring him down. I asked him if he thought he actually had the right to call her Sarah. He snapped back, saying I did, so why couldn't he? I set my spoon down. Glaring at him, I asked where he got off acting so smart. I told him straight up, you cannot do it, so do not. Next to me, Serafina watched admiringly, enjoying how possessive I was being. Barnaby put on a soft voice, asking if I did not think I was being a bit of a bully. He flashed Serafina a tragic, pity-me look. Watching his little performance, I had to laugh. The guy really missed his calling as an actor. Turning to Serafina, I smiled and asked my dear Sarah if she thought I was a bully. Serafina shook her head instantly. No, whatever Brother Asher does is right. Barnaby looked completely shell-shocked. He had always heard that Serafina was totally aloof and ice-cold to everyone. Yet here she was, acting incredibly gentle and obedient. Barnaby weakly asked if I could just let him inside first. He whined that his legs were sore from standing. Honestly, the guy had thicker skin than a concrete wall. He still had not given up on getting inside. I told him to ask Sarah, since it was her house. Barnaby looked at her hopefully, asking her to tell the guards to stop blocking him. Serafina completely ignored him, acting like he was invisible. She grabbed my hand and corrected me, saying it was our house. Looking at her serious face, I could not help but smile. Our house? Well, there is a pretty handsome guy waiting at our door for an answer. Hearing this, Serafina finally glanced over at the door. There was not a single trace of warmth on her gorgeous, icy face. Seeing her look, Barnaby quickly pushed his hair back and tried to call her Sarah again. Her cold voice cut him off. She covered my ears and told him to watch his tongue if he ever called her that again. Then she glared at the two bodyguards and coldly asked what she was paying them for. She warned them they could easily be replaced. Hearing that, the bodyguards grabbed Barnaby and literally dragged him away. Worried he might make a scene, they even made sure to muffle his mouth. Just like that, Barnaby was tossed right out of the villa. He could only whimper and whine the entire way, unable to speak. Watching Barnaby get dragged off made me absolutely thrill. It was pure comedy. Serafina looked a little confused, asking if I was really that happy since he was my brother. She wondered what was up with me. I looked down, letting my voice drop slightly. I admitted I had made a lot of mistakes and trusted the wrong people. Serafina hated seeing even a speck of sadness on my face. She grabbed the bowl of porridge and fed me a spoonful, warning me it would get cold. Then she took a bite herself and fed me another. We finished eating just like that, taking turns feeding each other. Getting kicked out left Barnaby absolutely seething with rage. Naturally, he blamed me for every single bit of his humiliation. Thinking back on how I had been acting lately, he realized I had changed. He got into his car, pulled out his phone, and called Priscilla. He told her to meet at the usual spot and drove off. Inside a massive hotel suite, clothes from both of them were scattered all over the floor and the sofa. Barnaby held Priscilla close, telling her that Asher had completely changed, worrying if he had somehow found out about their secret affair. Priscilla thought about it, confident they had not left any loose ends. Barnaby explained exactly what happened that morning while Priscilla listened closely, plotting their next move. She chuckled softly, her eyes narrowing. She said if they could not get to him, they would just have to create an opportunity. Since junior year of college was about to start, they needed to throw a get-together first. Let's invite our old classmates and friends to a party in a few days. If we call him, he will definitely show up. Once the time comes, as long as we plan ahead, it is foolproof. I cannot wait to see if the sole heiress of the Sterling family actually minds being with a guy who has slept with someone else. Barnaby did not expect Priscilla to hatch such a wicked scheme, but he was pretty excited to watch that drama unfold. I will follow your lead. Back at the Sterling family villa, Serafina and I sat side by side on a swing, surrounded by a massive field of golden sunflowers. A gentle breeze blew, rippling the vast sea of yellow. Serafina dangled her feet from the swing, casually swaying back and forth. I teased her, why not normal roses? Why this massive field of sunflowers? Serafina looked at me seriously and explained that back when I was gone, she spent all her free time sitting in this garden. Sunflowers made her feel like I was right there. I stared, totally confused. Why do I look like a sunflower? She laughed, calling me her little sun. She said I was the light of her life. Hearing that, I tightly hugged Serafina, promising to never leave her side again. Serafina opened her mouth to speak, but she hesitated, clearly holding back her next words. Finally, she nervously squeezed out the question, could I come live with her? She touched her nose. Her breathing grew shallow. She looked absolutely terrified of how I would respond. She quickly backpedaled, saying she would just visit often, but I cut her off. I told her yes. I wanted to live together and was actually worried she would say no. I was trying to invent an excuse to make her agree, and never expected her to ask first. It made me so happy. Hearing my answer, her eyes lit up with pure joy. She was completely stunned and incredibly excited. She wanted to send movers immediately, but I shook my head, telling her I would head back to grab my things. I promised I would just grab a few essentials and return. She immediately volunteered to come along. I refused. I did not want her sitting at home sulking, so I had to patiently coax her. I reminded her that her injury was still healing and she needed rest, promising her once again. I promised to be back in a flash and told her to be a good girl and wait. Finally, she smiled. I told her I would be careful, but my real plan was to go settle the score with the Liu family. Dragging her along was a terrible idea. Left alone, Serafina decided to completely remodel the house so I would be comfortable. She was never the type to hesitate. The exact second she got the idea, she jumped right into action. Pulling out her phone, she dialed Beatrix and started dumping a massive list of chores completely unrelated to work. Beatrix had to go buy curtains, bedsheets, and duvets, choosing colors and styles that a guy would actually like. Basically, anything that fit a man's taste was fair game. If she laid eyes on it, she bought it. Beatrix had absolutely no clue why she suddenly needed a mountain of men's items, but she did not dare ask. Before she could even process it, Serafina warned her of a bonus for finishing early and a pay cut for being late, then hung up. Beatrix was quietly fuming but kept her mouth shut. She knew her boss would actually follow through on docking her pay. The worst part was that the threat worked every single time. Honestly, who could blame her? Serafina simply paid too well. Not wanting to waste a single second, Beatrix rushed out to go shopping. Her speed was incredibly impressive. In record time, she purchased everything and rushed back to the villa. The clothes alone packed an entire delivery truck. Several other cars arrived loaded with tons of men's items while Beatrix stood there directing the whole operation. Workers carried box after box inside, immediately taking down the old drapes and putting up the new curtains. The new bedding was already dry cleaned, dried, and ready, so she ordered the maid staff to put them on the bed. Beatrix eagerly showed off her hard work, and Serafina nodded in approval, telling her she did a fantastic job. She joked that she was surprised a single person knew so much about guys. Beatrix did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was she being complimented or insulted? She decided to take it as a win. Instantly, Serafina's bedroom went through a massive change. It transformed from a pink princess room directly into a moody, gamer-style den. Since Serafina was in such a good mood, Beatrix cautiously asked what this massive bedroom remodel was actually for. Serafina just smiled, looking incredibly smug, and teased that a single person like her simply would not understand. Beatrix instantly regretted opening her mouth. She should have kept quiet instead of literally asking to be teased like that. After Beatrix left, Serafina surveyed the room. She adjusted a few things she felt weren't completely perfect. Resting her hands on her hips, she looked around and nodded. Asher should love this when he gets back, right? It was almost like a dream. She could already picture M running around the room, completely blown away by the surprise. Snapping back to reality, Serafina glanced at her watch. It was finally time. She wanted to cook dinner herself tonight, preparing a meal while waiting for me to return. She headed downstairs to the kitchen. Meanwhile, the moment I stepped inside the Liu family home, I saw Archibald and my stepmother, Penelope, waiting there. Barnaby was sitting right beside Penelope. Penelope was patting Barnaby on the back to comfort him, while Archibald looked furious, his face tight with anger. I raised an eyebrow. I already knew exactly what this was about. Barnaby had definitely told them what happened this morning. I walked over and sat down, completely ignoring the other two as I looked at my dad and spoke. Archibald was already incredibly frustrated with me. Hearing me address only him, his face darkened instantly. "Are you blind?" he snapped. "Can you not see? There are two other people sitting right here." A smirk tugged at my lips, but I quickly covered my mouth, pretending to be shocked. "Oh my, I am so sorry. Look at me, I just turned 20, and my vision is already going. Getting old, I guess?" I did not even notice Auntie Penelope and my little brother. Their faces turned completely red with embarrassment. It was absolutely hilarious. Auntie Penelope and my little brother are always so kind, surely they won't hold a grudge, right? Hearing that, Penelope gritted her teeth, desperately trying to keep her cool. With Archibald sitting right there, she could not lose her temper. She had to play the gentle, virtuous wife. Penelope forced a fake smile, saying of course not. Then she turned back to Barnaby, clearly seeking my reaction. They both acted like they were my victims, looking completely miserable and pitiful. But really, it was just a show for Archibald. I looked over at Barnaby, acting as if I had only just noticed him. My little brother looks so sad, I said. What is wrong? Who picked on you? Hearing that, Barnaby immediately started putting on another dramatic performance. He ignored me completely, turning to lean against Penelope as he continued his sob story. When he got back, he had heavily exaggerated the details, twisting the morning events to make Archibald furious, working hard to destroy his father's impression of Asher completely. He wanted Asher kicked out of the house immediately, but Barnaby never expected me to show up today. Usually, Barnaby played the perfect, obedient son. In the past, whenever anything went wrong, I was always the one to blame. Even when I got yelled at, I never dared to say a single word. I used to take the blame for his mistakes because I thought he genuinely cared about me. I thought he was my only ally here. We were only a month apart in age, so we grew up together. But since my mother passed, I grew distant from Archibald. Slowly, our bond dissolved entirely. Then, Barnaby, the illegitimate son, arrived on the scene. He spent his days trailing behind Archibald, sweet-talking him to win his affection. The mother and son played their roles perfectly, making me feel like an unwanted outsider in my own home. Having been reborn, I realized some things cannot be forced. Now, I only care about protecting the people who actually love me. Right then, Archibald noticed that Barnaby, who had nearly stopped crying, was putting on another heartbroken act. It broke his fatherly heart. Archibald scowled deeply, turning his furious glare right toward me. You have the nerve to ask that, he growled. You know exactly what you did to your brother. I just looked back innocently. I just walked through the door, how should I know? Archibald scowled. You have been gone for days. Where did you go? He demanded. Do you even care about this family anymore? Archibald only grew angrier as he continued to yell. He slammed his hand onto the armrest of the sofa, trying to look as intimidating as possible. I was not intimidated at all. I simply looked up at him. Do you not already know where I went? Barnaby must have given you all the details, so why bother asking me to repeat it? Besides, does it even matter if I am home? Archibald pointed a shaking finger at me, completely speechless with rage. Penelope rushed over to calm him down. Gently rubbing his back, she urged him not to be mad since Asher is still young and foolish. Archibald snorted coldly, muttering that he is 20 years old now. How is he considered young? Barnaby is a month younger than him, and he is way more mature. You do not have to keep defending him. It was only in this life that I finally realized Penelope was never actually trying to protect me. She always made it look like she was pleading for me, saying nice things in front of Archibald. But in reality, she was just throwing gasoline on the fire. Every time she spoke up, my punishment only got worse. I was stupid enough to think she actually cared about me. Then, Archibald glared at me and demanded answers. Since you know the truth, why have you not apologized to your brother yet? If he is willing to forgive you, we can let this go. To me, it sounded like the biggest joke in the universe. I just let out a cold laugh. Why should I apologize to him? Archibald glared at me, furious. He yelled that I had been gone for days. Barnaby was worried about you. He got up early in the morning just to go find you. But instead of showing any gratitude, you had him thrown out of your place. You wouldn't even let him inside for breakfast. He asked when my heart had become so ruthless. Meanwhile, Barnaby sat quietly nearby, glancing back and forth between me and Archibald. Speaking in a hoarse voice, he told Dad not to blame me because he did not need my apology. He begged him not to force me. I watched Barnaby acting and felt genuinely amused. He and Penelope were definitely cut from the same cloth. They had the exact same playbook. I smiled, sarcastically thanking my little brother for being so generous. I told them I was leaving. I refused to waste another second of my life on them. Getting on my feet, I prepared to head upstairs to pack my things. I had promised to have dinner with Serafina before leaving. If I stayed here any longer, she would start to worry about me, right? Just as I turned, Archibald barked at me to stop right there. I paused and calmly asked if there was anything else he wanted. Archibald stood up, walked over to me, and pointed directly at the chair where Barnaby was sitting. He warned me that if I did not apologize to my brother today, I would not be going anywhere. That made my blood boil. The atmosphere in the room turned freezing cold as I glared back at him with an icy expression. I told him to keep dreaming. He seemed intimidated by my presence, which only made him swing his hand at me in a blind rage. A sharp crack echoed through the room as my head snapped violently to the side from the impact. He had put everything into that strike. A bright red handprint flared on my cheek, but I refused to budge an inch. The physical impact caught me completely off guard. I had been too careless to react before his hand made contact. My cheek felt completely numb. I slowly ran my tongue along the inside of my mouth, checking the damage. It stung badly. Watching from the sidelines, Penelope and Barnaby quickly exchanged a smug, gloating look. They lowered their heads as smug grins crept onto their faces, though they quickly hid them so they would not get caught. I paused, clenching my fists tightly before letting them go. A cold smirk played on my lips. Glancing at them both, I turned to Archibald and told him he got his wish. I was never coming back. I will consider this slap our final settlement, but here is some advice: do not cross me again, or you will regret it. Without waiting for a response, I walked away, leaving them completely frozen as they tried to process what I just said. I headed straight upstairs to gather my belongings, shutting myself inside my room and locking the door behind me. Suddenly, a text notification cut through my dark thoughts. I pulled out my phone and saw a message from Serafina. She asked how things went and if I needed a ride. Her sweet message made my chest tighten with emotion. More than anything, I wanted her to hold me. I began typing a reply, telling her I was on my way, but then I stopped. My face probably looked terrible. I stood up, walked to the mirror, and leaned in close. It was already swollen and ugly. Frustrated, I wondered how I could possibly face Serafina looking like this. Over at the villa, Serafina had cooked a massive dinner, carefully arranging every single plate on the dining table. Worried the food would get cold, she covered each dish to keep them warm, finally nodding to herself in pure satisfaction. A soft, gentle smile touched her lips. She sat down at the table, eagerly waiting for me to walk through the door. As the minutes slowly dragged on, the wait became agonizing. Getting anxious, she walked out to the main gate. She stood by the entrance and stared down the empty street. Her brow furrowed when she could not see my shadow. Checking the time over and over again, she kept nervously raising her wrist until she lost count. By her calculations, I should have arrived by now. Where was I? The longer she stood there waiting, the more terrified she became. Terrified that something terrible had happened to me, and that I would never come back. Fearing their whole connection was just a lie. A million worst-case scenarios raced through her mind. Panicking, Serafina grabbed her phone and quickly typed out a text. Her fingers shook slightly as she pressed send. She stared at the screen, waiting. Still no response. With every passing second, her anxiety only grew worse. Did something happen to delay him? Panicking now, she hit dial. It rang once. Silence. Every empty ring made her chest tighten. Meanwhile, I was staring into a mirror, carefully dabbing on ointment. When my phone suddenly buzzed, I flinched, seeing Serafina on the screen. I knew she wanted to know where I was, but if I went back looking like a bruised mess, would she find it repulsive? Even if she did not find it ugly, seeing my injuries would make her incredibly angry and worried. Maybe I should wait until tomorrow. I carefully patted the cream onto my swollen skin. It should look better tomorrow. Swallowing hard, I finally picked up. Sarah. Just as her phone was about to go to voicemail, Serafina finally heard my voice crackle through the speaker. Hearing my voice, she exhaled a massive sigh of relief, demanding to know why Brother Asher was not back home yet. Sensing her mounting anxiety, I spoke softly, teasingly asking if she missed me. She answered without a second of hesitation. She admitted she missed me terribly, so I quickly explained that I missed her too, but just got delayed and lost track of time. Hearing I was busy, Serafina immediately asked if I needed any help. I shook my head, telling her I could handle it myself. Then when are you coming back? I will come pick you up. She grabbed her car keys, fully prepared to drive over right then, but hearing her offer to pick me up only made me panic. Staring at my bruised face in the mirror, my stomach twisted. Letting her see me like this was a terrible idea. I blurted out, asking Sarah if I could just come back tomorrow instead. On the other end, key in hand, Serafina froze mid-step. My words hit her like a wall. She stood there in complete silence. Squeezing her keys tightly, she stayed completely quiet. On my end, even the air felt heavy and cold. I did not need to ask to know she was furious. This silence meant she was sulking alone, and honestly, what else could it be? After a tense pause, I realized I had to go back. I could not leave Serafina alone to drown in her own unhappiness. If her mind started spiraling, the consequences would be absolutely disastrous. I broke the quiet first, keeping my voice light, joking that I was just teasing her and telling her not to be sad. I promised to be back shortly, telling her to just wait safely at home because I would be there in 30 minutes. Serafina was surprisingly easy to reassure, and knowing I was on my way home immediately lifted her spirits. Smiling, she nodded and hung up. I immediately headed downstairs, where Archibald and the rest of the family were still waiting. They were all visibly shaken by what I had said. After all, the Liu family fortune belonged to my mother. My message was loud and clear. I was fully prepared to strip away every single luxury the Liu family possessed. Terrified that I might actually follow through, they dreaded the day their comfortable lifestyle would suddenly vanish into thin air. Penelope and Barnaby watched me with pure, unfiltered anxiety. Barnaby nudged Penelope, silently urging her to talk some sense into Archibald because she absolutely could not lose her lavish lifestyle. She desperately wanted me gone, but she refused to let me take a single cent. Desperate, Penelope grabbed Archibald's hand. She begged her husband to calm down for his health, urging him to speak gently to Asher and stop him from threatening to leave. But Archibald was far too prideful, and he had already crossed the line by hitting me. There was absolutely no way he would swallow his pride and apologize to me. If I wanted to walk out that door, I should never think about coming back. Penelope was utterly helpless against Archibald's stubborn fury. She looked over at Barnaby, completely lost. When I stepped onto the staircase, a wave of pure panic washed over Barnaby. He knew I was heading straight to Serafina. If I walked away today, backed by the powerful Sterling family, getting his hands on me in the future would be virtually impossible. He hissed to Archibald, urging his brother to stop me. They could not let me walk out because who knew what would happen. Hearing Barnaby's fake concern, I just shook my head. The man really could not keep his composure. A mocking smirk crossed my face as Archibald glared at me, stepping down the stairs. Realizing I was actually walking out of this house, a flicker of panic finally touched his face. After all, a massive portion of his business was built entirely on my mother's inheritance. He simply could not afford to lose his empire. But expecting a kind word from him was completely useless right now. Instead, his voice came out incredibly cold and stiff. I only hit you once, didn't I? I'm your father. Am I not even allowed to strike you? You're throwing a tantrum and threatening to run away over nothing. If you walk out that door, don't ever call me dad again. His tone carried a heavy, ugly threat. Archibald clearly thought this threat would scare me into submission. He had never seen me dig my heels in like this before. It was like looking at a stranger. A stranger who suddenly reminded him intensely of someone else, my mother. Listening to Archibald's empty words, my heart remained completely cold and still. This house, and the people inside it, meant absolutely nothing to me now. My expression stayed blank, but right as I reached the door, I paused. Seeing me freeze at the threshold, Barnaby and the others immediately assumed I was having second thoughts about walking out. But a second later, they heard my voice, freezing cold and with my back still turned. Goodbye, Mr. Liu. With those words, a massive smile broke across my face. I turned and walked straight out, leaving everyone inside absolutely speechless. Archibald, losing his mind with humiliated rage, snatched a cup from the table and shattered it against the door, screaming Too late. I was already gone, hitting the gas and speeding away down the road. In under half an hour, I pulled up to Serafina's villa, where she had just finished reheating the food. Knowing I would be arriving soon, she walked out to wait by the main gate and watched me pull up. She stood there with a warm smile, waiting patiently for me to park the car. Watching her wait for me, I muttered to myself about how ridiculously gorgeous she was. Just standing there, she looked like a beautiful painting. She was an incredible woman. To think my past self actually ran away the moment we met, I must have been completely blind. I parked quickly, rushed over to Serafina, and pulled her tight into a warm hug. She looked like she wanted to cling to me forever, asking Brother Asher, "Are you hungry?" Hearing her ask that made me realize how empty my stomach actually was, so I nodded. Hand in hand, we walked inside. But then, she noticed the red, swollen handprint burning on my cheek. Serafina froze instantly, her beautiful smile completely vanishing. A mix of pure fury and deep heartache washed over her. How could Brother Asher have gotten hurt in such a short amount of time? She hadn't even noticed until this very second. She was furious, but terrified of scaring me with her anger. Trying her absolute best to calm down so she wouldn't look too intimidating, she stared at my face and asked in a slightly strained voice, "Who did this to you?" I froze, having almost forgotten about the injury myself. I gently patted her head, telling her please don't be mad. "I was just careless this once," I promised. "I won't let it happen again." But she demanded, "Who hit you?" Serafina was absolutely determined to get a name. Someone had brutally struck the person she cherished most. I let out a soft sigh. Archibald. Hearing that name broke Serafina's heart. She didn't need any explanation to know I had been treated horribly. She couldn't even bear to imagine what my life must have been like in that house. Thank goodness we were finally together now. "Does it hurt?" The second she asked, she realized how silly the question was. I just shook my head. "Not anymore," I told her. "Don't be sad." She gave a small nod and dropped the subject. Walking inside, the delicious aroma hit me, making my stomach growl even louder. It smelled incredible. I eagerly sat down at the table and grabbed my chopsticks. I grabbed a piece of the braised pork ribs and stuffed it right into my mouth. Serafina watched me anxiously, worried that Brother Asher might not find her cooking good enough. Seeing her hopeful face waiting for my verdict, I chewed a few times. "This is delicious," I said. "You cooked this so well. Did you take special classes?" Blushing at the compliment, Serafina looked down shyly. She stared at her bowl, casually poking at her food with her chopsticks. "I just followed an online tutorial," she admitted. "As long as Brother Asher likes it, that's all that matters." It really felt like this woman was practically omnipotent. She could do absolutely anything. I had heard that back in middle school, Serafina had already zipped through the entire high school curriculum. No wonder she took over the Sterling group so early. And her studies didn't suffer one bit, either. She aced every single subject. And even with cooking, just briefly watching a tutorial was enough to make a gourmet meal. Comparing yourself to a genius like that will honestly drive you crazy. Soon, our dinner ended with plenty of laughter. After my shower, I walked out. Serafina had already cleaned up in the other room. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding some ointment, waiting. She took the towel from my hands to dry my hair, gently dabbing the ointment on my face. "Tell me if it hurts, okay?" She focused intensely on treating my cheek. Staring at her dead serious expression, I could only manage a wry smile. "Sarah, stop looking at me. I know I look absolutely hideous right now." Serafina smiled softly. "Not ugly. Brother Asher is the most handsome." Saying that, she leaned close, resting against my chest. I breathed in her sweet scent. Suddenly, exhaustion washed over me. Half asleep, I mumbled that she smelled so good. Serafina looked down, curiously sniffing herself. She could not smell anything, but if Brother Asher thought she smelled nice, then she did. His opinion was all that mattered. She had found another little way to make him like her. Deeply satisfied, she drifted off into a night of sweet dreams. The next morning, Serafina joined me for breakfast. By then, the swelling on my face had gone down and mostly healed. "Brother Asher, rest up at home today. I am heading to the office." Hearing that, I frowned slightly. "But your injuries are still fresh. Are you really heading to work already?" Serafina gave a firm nod. "There is something I have to take care of." Seeing me stare down in silence, her lips curved into a smile. "I will be back for dinner tonight, so give me a smile." I glanced at her, and smirked. One smile costs 100 grand. It was just a casual joke. I never expected her to pull out her phone instantly. Her slender fingers flew across the screen, and my phone suddenly buzzed with a loud alert. I checked it, and saw a transfer of $1 million. This girl was seriously out of control with her money, casually tossing a whole $1 million my way. Caught completely off guard, I called her name. Serafina looked up, asking if Brother Asher thought the amount was too little. She picked up her phone again, fully prepared to transfer another $10 million right then and there. To her, $1 million was clearly pocket change. Before she could do anything else, I quickly grabbed her phone. "Stop! Why are you sending me all this cash? I have plenty." The truth was, I secretly ran my own business. It began small, with just a few dozen people, but gradually grew to employ over 1,000 workers. Archibald and the family had absolutely no clue. I left the daily operations entirely to a trusted manager. Nobody on the outside knew I was the boss. Initially, I kept it quiet because I was terrified of failing. But then it just kept growing. I figured that if people found out, it would only bring drama, so I kept it hidden. Obviously, our profits were nothing compared to the massive Sterling Group, but its growth potential was massive. To Serafina, it just seemed like I refused to use her money, and she looked downcast. "Do you really hate using my money? Have you still not decided if you want to be with me?" There she went, overthinking everything again. I smiled helplessly, reaching over to gently pat her head. "What crazy thoughts are you having now? I was just teasing. I have plenty of cash." Serafina pouted and handed over a black card. I knew for a fact that the people who owned this elite black gold card could be counted on one hand. Yet here she was, offering it directly to me. I was deeply touched. I did not want to upset her, and I am not the type to play hard to get. Accepting it made her happy. It was a complete win. As I walked her to the front door, I gently cupped her face with both hands and kissed her. I smiled down at her, calling it her reward before heading off to work. She immediately wondered if there would be another kiss when she got back. Before even stepping outside, she was already desperately waiting to come home. Shortly after she left, my phone rang. Glancing at the caller ID, I frowned slightly. I picked up, asking what was going on in a low voice. Roxanne sounded incredibly anxious on the other end. "Boss Saman is bidding insane amounts of money against us for that critical shipment of goods." I asked if she had figured out who was behind this. Roxanne felt defeated, unable to trace even a single piece of information. "They operate with extreme secrecy," she admitted, sounding completely defeated. Not a single trace was left. I told her to wait until I reached the office so we could talk. Hearing that, Roxanne breathed a sigh of relief. Whenever we hit a crisis, my involvement meant it was basically solved. She deeply respected this 20-year-old boss. He was young, but possessed a brilliant business mind and made major decisions without any hesitation. After hanging up, I grabbed a hat and a mask, then rushed straight out. Driving straight toward the office, I remembered that a major crisis hit the company around this exact time in my past life. But back then, my entire focus was on sticking close to Priscilla, and because of that, I completely dropped the ball on this. Roxanne usually managed the daily operations, but missing that batch of goods was a brutal hit. The company slowly started sliding downhill. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. In this life, I absolutely cannot let history repeat itself. I will not watch Summer Bloom Shia the startup. I poured my soul into fall apart. Meanwhile, over at the Sterling Group, Beatrix was updating Serafina in the executive office. Boss Serafina, we raised our bid to grab that inventory, but the competition is fighting back hard. We do not have it yet, and they are spending massive resources trying to unmask us. Serafina stayed silent for a second before asking, did they find out? Beatrix shook her head with a confident smile. No, we covered our tracks. Not a single trace of information got out. They are clearly burning through cash this time, completely desperate to secure this specific inventory. Once we lock it down, their business will pretty much face total bankruptcy. We just need your final approval to keep raising the price. Serafina kept scanning the contracts on her desk, murmuring, then let them go bankrupt. Win this at all costs. Forget the budget, just drown them in capital. These materials are critical if we want to scale up our operations. Sure, we do not need it as badly as our rival does, but no real business leader turns down a massive advantage. The second I stepped foot inside our headquarters, Roxanne cornered me to report the latest disaster with our inventory. I slammed my fist on the desk. Stealing my cargo is bad enough, but trying to drive me into bankruptcy? I will not take this lying down, and I am not backing down. It is a good thing Serafina handed me that massive stack of cash this morning. I can use it to resolve this crisis. We go all in and take our cargo back. If they raise the price, we match them. Forget the cost, but no matter how high I pushed my bids, the mystery rival matched it instantly. After a few brutal rounds of bidding, we completely blew past our original budget. Roxanne looked at me with pure panic. If this keeps going, even if we win, we will lose money. What is the plan? I stared at the floor, my mind racing. I knew the price was way higher than what the inventory was actually worth. But without these supplies, our company has zero future. Plus, it was Serafina's money I was burning. I knew the Sterling family possessed infinite wealth, but I could not just stubbornly throw her cash into a bottomless pit. I let out a heavy, exhausted sigh and told Roxanne to drop it for now. I need to find another way. Roxanne looked pretty reluctant to give up. She opened her mouth to argue, but ultimately hesitated and decided to keep quiet. Right now, we had absolutely no other options. I beat Serafina back home that evening. The moment she stepped through the front door, she found me sitting silently on the couch, completely staring into space. Serafina was hoping for her usual welcome home kiss, so she purposely made some noise to announce her arrival, but I was completely lost in my own head. She walked over, sat beside me, and asked with a pout, what is my brother Asher thinking about? Right then, I snapped out of it, forcing a smile as I looked at her. Hey Serafina, you are back. Sensing my heavy mood, she made a mental note to leave work even earlier. She did not want me waiting around forever. Throughout dinner, she kept watching me stare blankly at my plate. My strange mood made her pretty anxious. Asher, is something wrong with the food tonight? No, it is delicious. I jolted awake at her voice, quickly shoveling mouthfuls of rice into my mouth to hide my stress. I cleared the bowl instantly. I am going to wash up first. Serafina silently watched me walk up the stairs. Her eyes were laced with suspicion. She would have to be completely blind not to realize something was seriously bothering me. But she had no idea what was actually wrong. Looking down at the half-empty table, she whispered he promised we would eat together, but he barely touched anything. She immediately lost her appetite, too. Setting her chopsticks down, she waved the butler over and spoke in a hushed tone. Did anyone upset Asher today? The butler shook his head quickly and replied that nobody had done anything. But Asher did go out, and he returned looking pretty upset. Serafina knit her brows. He went out today? A sudden wave of guilt washed over her. She felt like she was failing him. She had no clue I even left the house. Even worse, I had returned home completely miserable, and she had absolutely no clue what caused it. She clearly needed to assign people to shadow and protect him, keeping her updated constantly. Standing up, Serafina headed toward the bedroom. Once she showered and stepped back inside, she found me already buried under the covers. Out of nowhere, Serafina spoke up. Do you have something you need to tell me? My entire body went stiff. Why is she asking this now? Did she find out about my startup? If I keep hiding it, she is going to be absolutely furious. I sat up fast on the mattress. Look, I do have a company, but we hit a pretty major roadblock recently. Once I finished explaining the basics, Serafina felt her heart drop. A heavy sense of dread washed over her. There was no way the timing was this perfect. The rival she was fighting for those goods was actually Brother Asher's company. The mere suspicion made Serafina freeze right in her tracks. Since she stayed quiet, I assumed she was just angry on my behalf. Don't worry, I told her. I will find a way to deal with this. Sarah, don't worry about it. Serafina forced a tight, stiff smile. Yeah, she managed. They really went too far. Brother Asher, what did you say your company was called again? When I casually answered Summer Bloom, her heart instantly plummeted straight into a bottomless abyss. The company she had been ruthlessly squeezing for those supplies today also had the word summer in its name. If that really was Brother Asher's startup, and he realized she was behind the attack, she was completely and utterly dead. She had literally threatened to bankrupt his business. Serafina pulled me back down under the blankets, wrapping her arms tight around my waist. Let's just go to sleep for now. We can figure it out tomorrow. Maybe things will just work themselves out. Holding her close, I drifted off into a peaceful sleep. I cleared my head of the entire mess. Within minutes, exhaustion won, and I completely passed out. Once she was sure I was asleep, Serafina carefully lifted my hand off her waist. She quietly slipped out of bed, tiptoeing into the nearby study and leaving the door cracked open just a tiny bit. She immediately grabbed her phone and dialed Beatrix. As soon as the call picked up, Serafina asked, desperately clinging to a tiny shred of hope, "What is the name of that rival company?" "Summer Bloom." Beatrix gave her the straight answer. Hearing those two words out loud again felt like watching her entire world shatter to pieces. She was finished. She had actually gone and targeted Brother Asher's own business. Send those supplies back right now. Give them to Summer Bloom for free. Beatrix gasped. "Boss Sarah, are you actually serious?" Beatrix figured she had to be hearing things. After all, they had fought viciously to secure those items. Now she was supposed to just hand them over without making a dime. She wondered if she was dreaming, or if Serafina had lost her mind. Summer Bloom is actually Asher's company. I just realized this myself tonight. Hearing that, Beatrix instantly got it. After silently mourning for her boss for a couple of minutes, she sighed understood. "I will do it immediately," Serafina added. "I am still worried, so hide our identity." "Got it. From this moment on, absolutely nobody is allowed to mention this deal ever again." Ending the call, Serafina let out a quiet sigh. She turned around to head back to bed, completely unprepared for what was waiting. I was standing right there, leaning against the doorframe with my arms crossed, watching her with a smug little grin. Serafina jumped, taking a sharp step back as absolute panic took over. I watched her struggle, taking in every single detail. "Brother Asher, when did you get here?" She felt so guilty her tongue practically tied itself in knots. "Did you hear all that?" I kept my cool, playing completely dumb as I asked, "Hear what?" "I just wanted to remind you to get some rest." With that, I turned around and walked back to bed. No wonder our team couldn't trace the rival. It was her. I was literally using Serafina's cash to bid against Serafina herself. Honestly, the sheer irony made me want to burst out laughing. Since I kept my business a secret, she had no clue. Even so, she had the nerve to threaten my business. I was definitely going to have to punish her just a little bit. Watching me walk away made her panic. She scrambled to keep up, trailing right behind me. When she saw me sitting there with my back turned, she rushed around to force eye contact. "Brother Asher, I am so sorry. I swear to you, I had absolutely no idea it was your business. If I knew, I never would have said those things, let alone tried to steal your inventory." She leaned in, hoping a sweet kiss would soften me up. Instead, I blocked her lips with my hand, shutting her down. Serafina pouted, looking totally heartbroken. "But Brother Asher, you promised I could kiss you anytime." I shot her a look. "Starting now, kisses are banned. Consider it your punishment." She whined, "Can we pick something else? This is way too cruel." She clearly wanted to negotiate, but she was too terrified of making me genuinely angry again. Just look at Serafina, pouting like a wronged housewife taking the fall. Why does she have to be this cute? An outsider would swear she just suffered some terrible injustice. Choking back a laugh, I leaned over and pressed a soft kiss on her forehead, then quickly spun away, acting like I had nothing to do with it. But that tiny kiss was all it took. Her eyes instantly lit up with pure joy. She beamed, her face glowing. "Brother Asher," she teased, "didn't you just say?" I cut her off, keeping a deadpan expression as I spun some complete nonsense. "I said you couldn't kiss me, never said I couldn't kiss you." Watching her reaction was pure entertainment. Honestly, how does she get satisfied this easily? One tiny kiss, and she was on cloud 9. I did not have the heart to keep teasing her. I gently stroked her hair and told her to sleep. Serafina happily closed her eyes and drifted off. The next morning, a buzzing phone woke me up. The space beside me was empty, the sheets already cold. She must have slipped out hours ago. I swiped to answer, and an incredibly hyper voice blasted through the speaker. "Boss Lou." Pulling the phone back, I sighed. "Roxanne, I am totally fine. Why are you screaming like you just saw a ghost?" Caught off guard, she got embarrassed and immediately dropped her voice to a whisper. "I am just so hyped about that new shipment." But mentioning the cargo made Roxanne lose control, her volume rising again. She quickly clamped a hand over her mouth, lowered her pitch, and started over. "We got the goods. The suppliers literally handed them over for free." Tell me I am not dreaming. Honestly, I was not shocked at all. I just gave her a quiet, Roxanne had no clue what had actually happened behind closed doors. To her, my reaction was impossibly cool, exactly what she expected of her boss. Her respect for me soared to a whole new level. I added one more instruction. Since they delivered it, accept the shipment and put it to use. Do not waste their gift. Roxanne agreed, knowing my real goal was to build a solid bridge with the Sterling group. After hanging up, a text from my best friend Dexter popped up. Where have you been hiding all summer? Bros over girls, man. Did you forget about us? I chuckled and texted back then, lunch is on me today. Dexter shot back a thumbs up, calling me the Godfather. I quickly showered, grabbed my keys, and walked out of the Sterling mansion. I headed toward Dexter's place. Almost immediately, a strange car started tailing me from behind. Pulling up to his apartment building, I grabbed my phone to call him, but then I spotted Dexter walking out the front doors. He spotted my ride instantly, sprinting right toward the front of the vehicle, yanked the passenger door open, and climbed in. Long time no see, I rolled my eyes, shifting into drive. Didn't we hang out literally a few days ago? You call that a few days? It has been over a month. Come on, spill the tea. Is there a new girl or what? I played dumb, pretending to have no idea what he meant. What situation? But Dexter was dying to know. Suddenly, Priscilla crossed his mind. His face instantly fell and he asked with a serious tone, don't tell me. Tell me you didn't actually hook up with that gold digger Priscilla. Right then, the traffic light ahead turned red. Hearing that, I slammed on the brakes. What on earth are you talking about? How could I ever be with someone like her? Just talking about her made my blood boil with absolute disgust. Dexter relaxed at my reaction, but his curiosity was definitely sparked. Why did Luigi and Asher suddenly despise Priscilla this much? Back in the day, just hearing her name would make him melt. He used to be completely obsessed with her. I glanced at Dexter and offered a faint smile, knowing how much he cared about me. As the light switched to green, I hit the gas again. Honestly, I have some news for you. It is probably going to blow your mind. Spill it. He laughed, but I just kept my voice perfectly flat. I am dating Serafina. Dexter bolted upright in shock. What? He literally could not believe his ears. I repeated it, slow and steady. Dexter stared blankly. Wait, that's Serafina? I gave him a weak, helpless smile. I rolled my eyes at him. How many other Serafinas do we know? And yes, I am currently living with her. The bombs kept dropping. Dexter was completely frozen. How does your entire life rewrite itself in just 1 month? He literally could not process any of it. Didn't you always complain that she never smiles? That she has a cold, keep-away vibe when she looks for you? You ran like she was the plague. How did you two end up living together? Tell me she didn't force you. He really couldn't fathom any other reason. I just cracked up laughing at his wild theories. If she had forced me, would I really look this happy right now? He nodded, slowly putting the pieces together. I am with her because I genuinely love her, and I want this. But Dexter was still dying to know, how did you fall for her so fast? I answered with complete seriousness, she saved my life. Yeah, she actually saved my life in her past life. She literally put her life on the line for me. Dexter thought I was talking total nonsense, so he just brushed me off. But compared to that gold digger, Priscilla, Serafina was infinitely better. We soon reached our destination and headed straight inside the reserved restaurant. The moment we sat down, a server brought over the menus. Dexter flipped his open and took a quick look. Just as I figured, every single dish was insanely expensive. Worried Dexter would hesitate to order, I spoke up. I'm heading to the restroom, look at the menu, and get whatever you want. Seriously, order whatever you want today. Dexter flipped through the pages, practically drooling. Everything looked amazing, but he worried about ordering too much. He waved me off, telling me to go ahead. But on my way back, just 2 steps from our table, I spotted the 2 people I despised most walking into the restaurant. Priscilla and Barnaby were practically glued to each other. They were practically hanging off one another, laughing and chatting. Talk about absolute garbage luck. The one time I go out for a nice meal, I run into them. When I got back to the table, Dexter had already picked 2 dishes. Seeing me return, he grabbed the menu, slid next to me, and said he had picked out those 2. He told me to look and see what else I wanted. But just as I went to sit down, a highly annoying voice rang out. It was Barnaby, asking why I was eating here too as he walked right toward us. I turned my head and glared. Priscilla trailed right behind him. I coldly pointed out that they could eat here, so why couldn't I? Barnaby just smiled and claimed he didn't mean it like that. He said he never expected to run into me and that he still hadn't gotten used to me leaving home. I opened my mouth to reply, but Dexter beat me to it, letting out a sarcastic laugh. Oh, so you're not used to it? Then you should probably move out too, he scoffed. Hearing that, I kept my head down, struggling to hold back my laughter. I couldn't contain it and burst out laughing, my shoulders shaking. Dexter's sharp tongue was seriously no joke. Dexter had despised Barnaby for a long time. Any politeness he showed him in the past was purely out of respect for me. Now that I openly disliked Barnaby too, there was absolutely no reason for Dexter to play nice. Barnaby stood there completely speechless, his face twisting in anger as he pointed a finger at Dexter. but Dexter cut him off immediately. Looking sideways at his hand, Dexter drawled, "Mr. Lee, did your mother never teach you that pointing fingers is incredibly rude?" Barnaby snapped, asking who he was calling Mr. Lee. He absolutely despised it when anyone brought up his old surname. He had already legally changed his last name to Liu. Why did everyone still insist on remembering his original surname? Dexter just sneered. "What, you play the young master for a few days and suddenly forget your actual family name? Go do whatever you actually came here to do, and stop hovering around our table like a pest." With that, Dexter completely ignored him and went right back to browsing the menu with me. Barnaby ground his teeth in sheer rage. Glancing back at Priscilla, he asked if she was not just talking about wanting to see his brother. "Well, here he is, so go ahead and say whatever you wanted to say." He shoved her forward a little, giving a subtle wink to signal that she should take the initiative and get close to me. Even though I did not even look up, Priscilla forced a fake smile. Bending over with a fawning tone, she said it had been far too long since she last saw me. "Since we randomly crossed paths today, why do we not grab a table and eat together?" Acting like I only just noticed her, I looked up with fake surprise and asked what she was doing there. "I seriously did not even see you standing there. Why does it feel like you show up everywhere I go?" That question was entirely deliberate. I wanted to see how she would spin this lie. She clearly did not expect it. Her smile faltered for a brief second before she shot a glance at Barnaby, stammering that she just had some business nearby. Barnaby immediately chimed in to back her up. He claimed he just bumped into her on his way to a meeting and suggested lunch. Since they saw me, why not join? They asked if they could pull up a chair, and Priscilla offered to pay for everything as a treat. She begged for the honor of dining together. Internally, I rolled my eyes because these two were incredibly annoying. Showing my clear annoyance, I snapped that looking at their faces completely ruined my appetite, so why would I eat with them? Just as I opened my mouth to reject them, Dexter secretly nudged my leg under the table. I stared at him, totally baffled. Did Dexter actually want to sit with them? I thought he loathed them more than anyone. Dexter winked at me furiously, gesturing subtly for me to just go along with it and eat. A flicker of surprise crossed my face. I had no idea what kind of scheme Dexter was cooking up, so I just had to play along. I threw a cold glance at Barnaby and Priscilla, my voice completely distant as I gave them a flat fine. Hearing me agree, the two of them scrambled to sit. Priscilla claimed the spot opposite me, while Barnaby sat across from Dexter. Sitting right across from me, Priscilla studied my face up close, quietly comparing me to Barnaby in her mind. She realized I easily outclassed Barnaby in looks and family status. Plus, at the end of the day, I was the actual, biological Liu heir. Even if Archibald favored Barnaby, he was still nothing more than an illegitimate kid when it really mattered. High society was obsessed with bloodlines. The more Priscilla analyzed this, the more desperate she became to hook me. She had total faith in her looks and her little games. Catching a guy was supposed to be easy, like tearing through thin paper. Snaring me would be a breeze. If Barnaby was already wrapped around her finger, there was no way Asher would resist her. "Asher, you should order. Do not be shy. Get whatever you want," Priscilla offered with an enthusiastic smile. She knew the dating game. Whether you are pursuing a guy or a girl, making the very first move is absolutely mandatory. I slid the menu over to Dexter and told him to order. He had been waiting for this very moment and rubbed his hands together. Holding nothing back, he grabbed the menu and started listing plates to the waiter. "That one. And this one looks good too. Give us a serving of this, too." After pointing at God knows how many items, he finally stopped and shut the menu. "That ought to do it. Let us start with these, and if we are still hungry later, we can order more." Priscilla let out a quiet sigh of relief. She had nearly lost it and screamed that they could never finish all of that. She had no real idea what Dexter had just selected, but everything here was incredibly expensive. Sitting on absolute pins and needles, she wondered if the allowance her sugar daddy sent this month could even cover the final bill. The server carefully scribbled down the massive order, and as Dexter finished, they asked the standard follow-up. "All right, any dessert today?" Hearing those words, Priscilla almost leaped out of her chair to scream. "No," she silently pleaded, gritting her teeth and straining to hear a refusal from Dexter. She desperately wanted to hear him say no, but Dexter had zero intention of letting her off the hook. He caught her frantic expression, a mocking smirk playing on his lips. Then he smiled and asked the server for dessert recommendations. "We just put a new red velvet on the menu, and the reviews are excellent. Here to try it?" Dexter nodded, saying that sounds perfect. "Bring a slice for everyone at the table." At that, Priscilla felt her heart start to bleed. Unable to stay quiet, she blurted out that she would pass on dessert. "I do not really like sweet things," she claimed, turning to flash a quick, forced smile at me. Trying to mask her sheer panic behind a grin, she regretted everything. Anything to save a few bucks at this point. Why did she play big shot and offer to pay? Why did she invite Dexter? She seriously suspected he was targeting her on purpose. He knew she was paying and ordered a feast. Within minutes, the food began to arrive. Platter after platter covered the table. Dexter snatched up his chopsticks, eager to dig in and try absolutely everything. He wanted to see if the expensive food lived up to the hype. Normally, he would never blow cash like this. But since a pretty girl was footing the bill, it felt like a crime not to order the entire menu. That thought alone made the food smell amazing. Even Barnaby looked at the massive spread and felt it was completely overkill. He knew instantly that Dexter did this on purpose, asking if they could even finish half of it. Dexter scoffed, saying it was barely enough, adding that even a feast like this was not enough to keep Barnaby quiet. That was Dexter for you, brutally honest. Barnaby sat there completely speechless while Dexter ignored him and got back to eating. He concentrated entirely on tasting every single plate on the table, enthusiastically offering me bites of whatever he found delicious. Asher, you have to try this one. I picked up a piece and tasted it surprisingly good. Priscilla saw her opening and tried to slide into the conversation, eager to recommend another dish by calling out my name. Without even looking up, I shut her down with a cold reminder about standard dining etiquette: eat in absolute silence. Priscilla's expression soured instantly at the rejection. Her fragile pride had clearly taken a serious bruising. Was he calling her classless? I ignored her completely and just kept eating. Having annoying people sitting across from me did not ruin my appetite at all. Good food should never go to waste. Whenever I tasted something great, I offered some to Dexter. We laughed and chatted, totally enjoying the moment. Meanwhile, Barnaby and Priscilla sat there, chewing their food in dead silence. They had to listen to Dexter and me laughing and joking around. They absolutely hated it. Eat in silence? Sleep in silence? Honestly, I just made up that rule to shut them up. Barnaby sat there, completely miserable, looking from Priscilla beside him to me, sitting across the table. Then, a devious idea popped into his head. His eyes lit up with pure, calculating malice. Waiting until everyone was looking away, Barnaby slipped out his phone and slid it to the edge of the table. He aimed the camera right at Priscilla and me. He lined up the shot and snapped a quick picture. He looked down at the photo of us. A cruel, satisfied smirk spread across his face. The angle made it look like only Priscilla and I were dining together, with her eyes locked right on me across the table. Dexter had just cracked some stupid joke I can't even remember now, but it had me smiling bright. Anyone looking at this picture would swear we were out on a date. He scrolled to Serafina in his contacts and hit send. As the message went through, his face twisted into a cold sneer. He looked back up, instantly masking his face, pretending absolutely nothing out of the ordinary had happened. He had actually used a dirty trick to get Serafina's number in the first place. Years ago, on a rainy day, I fell terribly ill. Serafina panicked when she heard the news. She bought a ton of medicine and stood downstairs in the rain outside my place. But I never went down to see her, and only Barnaby knew the real reason why. He had blocked her from getting to me. I was burning up with a fever, completely passed out asleep in my bed. I had no clue she was even there. Barnaby knew, but he was never going to let Serafina and me be together. He walked right up to Serafina and told her flat out, "My brother does not want to see you, so you should just go home." He suggested they trade numbers instead, promising to keep her updated on my health so she could have some peace of mind. She agreed and added him. In the beginning, Barnaby actually did text her every now and then to tell her how I was doing. She would actually reply to him, even asking for updates herself. But once I got better, she ghosted him. Every text he sent went completely unanswered, not even a single word back. Barnaby was consumed with jealousy. He had fallen hard for Serafina the very first moment he laid eyes on her. Yet she only ever looked at Asher. He was furious. If he could not have her, then Asher would not get her either. That is why he used to pull every trick in the book to talk trash about Serafina to me. He kept telling me how terrifying the rumors about her were, and I fell for it. I made sure she never got close to me. Still, Serafina only cared about me. Barnaby never stood a single chance with her. He glanced at Priscilla next to him. If they did not share the exact same goal right now, she would be useless to him. Once school started and the reunion wrapped up, he planned to cut her off completely. Nobody at the table noticed what Barnaby just did. Dexter and I kept eating and talking inside the Sterling Group executive office as if we were alone. Just then, Serafina heard her phone chime. Hoping it was from me, she grabbed the device with a smile, only to find the message was from Barnaby. A wave of dread washed over her. Deep down, she knew nothing good ever came from his texts. Serafina frowned, pressing her lips into a thin, tight line. Part of her did not want to see it, but she knew it had to be about me. She hesitated, then tapped the screen. Staring at the two people in the photo, her heart skipped a beat. She could barely breathe. Her eyes locked onto the screen. She gripped her phone so hard, her knuckles turned white. She could not believe she was looking at me. With a trembling finger, she zoomed in closer on the image. On her screen, I was smiling so warmly. She used to love that smile, but right now, it cut her like a knife. It cut her, because I was not smiling at her. I was smiling at the woman sitting across from me. Tears welled up in her eyes as pain washed over her. A million questions began spinning through her head. Could Asher really not let go of Priscilla? If so, why had he been treating Serafina so well these past few days? Was all of it just a lie? What was his game? Did he still think Priscilla was the better option? Just thinking about it triggered her dark thoughts all over again. The nightmare was starting all over. This time was different. It was far worse than before. That tiny bit of peace I had spent days building in her heart instantly crumbled, shattering into a million pieces we might never put back together. Serafina gasps for air as the entire room spins around her. Like a robot, she slides open her desk drawer. Inside lies a razor-sharp silver letter opener. Her shaking fingers reach down to grab the freezing metal. He lied to me. Brother Asher doesn't want me, she mutters to the empty room, her eyes completely vacant. She locks the heavy wooden door of the CEO's office, slides into the darkest corner, and curls into a tight, shivering ball. Back at the restaurant, Dexter and I are laughing over a joke when he suddenly cuts off mid-sentence. His eyes lock onto Barnaby's hand, which is quickly pulling back from the edge of the table. Dexter's expression hardens instantly. Hey, little Mr. Lee. What were you just doing with your phone? Barnaby's smug smirk freezes. Nothing, just checking the time, he stammers. But Dexter isn't buying it. In a flash, Dexter lunges across the table and rips the phone straight out of his hand. Hey, give that back. Barnaby panics. He tries to scramble over the table, but I grab him by the collar and slam him right back into his seat. A cold wave of pure dread hits me, making my heart pound. Dexter presses the home button. The screen glows, completely unlocked. He opens the texts. You son of a Dexter snaps. He shoves the screen in my face. Look at this, Asher. This snake took a photo of you and Priscilla, cropped me out completely, and sent it to Serafina. One look at that picture and my blood turns to ice. Pure panic takes over. I knew Serafina better than anyone else. I knew how fragile she was, and how fast she would spiral into total self-destruction if she felt abandoned. A blinding, white-hot rage explodes inside my chest. Without saying a word, I slam my fist right into Barnaby's face. Crack. He flies out of his chair, crashing to the floor with a bloody nose, groaning in agony. Priscilla shrieks, leaping to her feet. Asher, are you insane? I point a shaking, threatening finger at her. Shut your mouth, you disgusting parasite. If anything happens to Serafina because of this, I will personally ruin both of your lives. I spin toward Dexter, my voice shaking. Dex, keep them here. Make them pay every cent of this bill. If they can't, call the police. I have to run. Dexter cracks his knuckles, glaring at the two on the floor. Don't worry, brother. Go save your girl. These two aren't leaving this restaurant until they are completely cleaned out. I race out of the restaurant, ignoring the shocked stares of the other customers, and dive into my car. I tear toward the Sterling Group headquarters like a lunatic, breaking at least 5 traffic laws on the way. My hands are trembling violently on the wheel. Please, Serafina, please just let me explain. Don't do anything stupid. I yank out my phone and call Beatrix. Boss Asher, she answers, sounding totally confused. Beatrix, get to Serafina's office right now. Kick the door down if you must. Do not let her out of your sight, I roar. I hear the frantic thud of Beatrix running, followed by heavy banging on wood. Boss Serafina, open up. Beatrix's voice comes through the line, heavy with pure panic. Boss Asher, it is locked from the inside. She is not responding. Find the master key. I am 2 minutes away. I slam the brakes right at the entrance of the Sterling building, throw my keys to a shocked guard, and bolt toward the private elevator. Reaching the top floor, I find Beatrix shaking as she desperately tries to jam the master key into the lock. I rip the key from her hand, shove it in, twist, and kick the heavy door open. Serafina. My eyes wildly scan the massive space until I spot her, curled up in the corner behind her desk. That silver letter opener is pressed hard against her pale wrist. A tiny bead of blood is already starting to form. She looks up at me with dead, hollow eyes, carrying a despair that tears my soul apart. You came to say goodbye, she whispers, completely lifeless. Go back to her, Brother Asher. I know I am sick. I know I am not normal. You do not have to force yourself anymore. No. I drop straight to my knees right in front of her, ignoring my expensive suit. I do not dare grab the blade, terrified she will flinch and cut deeper. Serafina, look at me. Look into my eyes. I did not go to see her. It was a setup. My hands shake as I pull out my phone and instantly video call Dexter. Dexter picks up instantly. Show her, Dex. Show her right now. I scream. Dexter flips his camera. On the screen, a beaten, miserable Barnaby and a terrified Priscilla are cornered by Dexter and some restaurant security guards. The huge table of food sits between them. Boss Serafina, Dexter yells through the phone. That idiot Barnaby sent you that photo, but he cropped me out. Asher and I were just having lunch when those two shameless freeloaders sat down without asking. Asher didn't even look at her. He straight up told them their faces ruined his appetite. Serafina stared blankly at the screen. Her hollow eyes blinked, struggling to process the truth. I dropped my phone, gently prying the sharp letter opener from her cold, trembling grip. "Sarah, my beautiful, sweet Sarah," I choked out. Tears finally spilled over as I flung the metal blade across the room. I pulled her close, pouring every ounce of love and desperation I had into that embrace. "You are the only one I love. I wouldn't trade a single strand of your hair for a million Priscillas. My entire life is you. Please, don't ever doubt that." Finally, Serafina's rigid posture melted. The wall of ice around her heart shattered. A sudden, overwhelming warmth flooded in. She buried her face into my neck, crying hard as she let go of all the fear and insecurity she had carried. "I was so scared," she sobbed. "I thought you did not want me," she sobbed, clinging tightly to my shirt. "Forever, I will love you," I promised, kissing her head. That single day marked a massive turning point. Almost losing her ignited a fierce ruthlessness in me. The next morning, I gathered the proof of Barnaby and Priscilla's secret hotel meetings, information Roxanne had dug up days ago. I anonymously leaked those photos and hotel receipts to Archibald, Penelope, and the university board. The fallout was spectacular. Archibald was a proud man who valued his social standing above everything else. He was utterly humiliated to learn his golden boy younger son was tangled in such a dirty, scandalous affair right before the semester began. Furious, Archibald canceled Barnaby's cards and kicked him out. Priscilla, realizing her target was now penniless and completely useless, dumped him right then and there. Left without her wealthy benefactor and facing a ruined reputation at school, she had to drop out and head home in total disgrace. Barnaby actually tried crawling back to me, begging for cash, but I had the sterling bodyguards throw him onto the pavement. They were gone for good. 3 years later, warm morning sunlight spilled through the massive French windows of our bedroom. I woke up to the feeling of soft lips kissing my cheek. Opening my eyes, I smiled. Serafina was already fully dressed in her sharp business suit, looking absolutely stunning as she leaned over me. "Morning, husband," she whispered, her eyes curving into beautiful crescent shapes. To that, I replied, "Morning, Mrs. Liu," wrapping my arm tightly around her waist and pulling her down for a proper kiss. Over those 3 years, Summer Bloom merged its key operations with the Sterling Group. Together, we built a massive empire in the corporate world, but more importantly, Serafina had fully healed. No more hidden knives, no more locked doors. The deep, painful insecurities of her past were washed away by years of my unconditional love. She finally knew down to her very bones that I would never leave her. "I have an early meeting," she said, tracing my jaw, "but I will be back early. Remember our dinner date?" I smiled and kissed her forehead. I watched my wife walk out, her steps light, confident, and full of life. Leaning back, a profound peace washed over me. In my past life, I was blind and lost everything. But this time, I secured the most precious treasure the world had to offer. My little boy, my Serafina. Our happiness would finally last a lifetime.